Hello, this is another Junior Super Bowl video on the Irish Civil War. And today's topic is the Irish Republican Army and the Anglo-Irish Treaty. So, if you didn't know already, the IRA was a guerrilla army that fought during the Irish War of Independence against Great Britain from 1919 to 1921. It saw itself as a legitimate army of the Irish Republic, which was declared in 1919. However, the Anglo-Irish Treaty, which ended the conflict, was a compromise that did end up abolishing the Irish Republic. So its staying as like a general standing army was pretty much dissolved with that. And then it eventually just became a militia, pretty much. So this ended up creating the self-governing Irish Free State under the British Empire. The IRA was deeply split after this. Some accepted the treaty, whereas a lot of others rejected it. They also rejected all the civilian authorities who had accepted it. This eventually led to the Irish Civil War in late June 1922 between the pro and anti-treaty factions of what was the Irish Republic. Alright, so to begin, the Anglo-Irish Treaty was signed on the 6th of December 1921 and was narrowly ratified by the Dáil Éireann. Excuse me if I'm wrong, but it's the Irish Parliament, if I got it wrong. Daireann, if you're interested in looking up. On the 7th of January 1922, here's actually a picture of the signing. Although the treaty was negotiated by Michael Collins, the de facto leader of the IRA, and had been approved by the Irish Republican Brotherhood, the IRA's senior ranking officers were deeply divided over the decision of the Dáil to ratify the treaty. Of the general headquarters, the GHQ staff, 9 members were in favor of the treaty while 4 opposed it. So I'm just going to go through that list right now. Richard Mulcahy, and excuse me if I get these wrong, these are all Irish, so... And I'm not great at reading a lot of these. Eowyn O'Duffy. So Richard Mulcahy something, was the chief of staff. Eowyn O'Duffy was the deputy chief of staff. J.J. O'Connell was the assistant chief of staff. Geroid O'Sullivan, adjutant general. Sean McMahon, quartermaster general. Excuse me. Michael Collins, director of intelligence. Diarmuid O'Hegarty, Director of Organization, Emmett Dalton, Director of Training, Pyrrhus Bielsi, Director of Publicity, and then the people who were anti-treaty were Rory O'Connor, Director of Engineering, Liam Mellows, Director of Purchases, Sean Russell, Director of Munitions, and Seamus O'Donovan, Director of Chemicals. Austin Sack, whose position of the GHQ staff was ambiguous after Brugge tried to foist him on GHQ, was also anti-treaty. Just a little note there. So on the 10th of January, at least 3 IRA anti-treaty members of the GHQ, one account claims 4, 6 divisional commanders and the officers commanding of the 2 Dublin brigades met to formulate their anti-treaty strategy. They argued that the IRA's allegiance was to the Dáil of the Irish Republic and that the decision of the Dáil to accept the treaty meant that the IRA no longer owed that body its allegiance. They called for the IRA to withdraw from the authority of the Dáil and entrust the IRA executive with control over the army. Following day, the group issued Mulcahy with a letter, requesting that an army convention be held on the 5th of February to discuss these proposals. The letter signed by GHQ staff Rory O'Connor, right here, Liam Mellows, Sean Russell, and Seamus O'Donovan, as well as Oscar Traynor, Liam Lynch, and other IRA commandants. On the 13th of January, Mulcahy replied to the anti-treaty IRA officers to state that he would not call it a convention without the authority of the Dáil Éireann as the government of the Republic. On the same day, Rory O'Connor wrote to Eowyn Duffin stating that a convention would be held called regardless. O'Connor added that O'Duffy's orders would only be obeyed by the anti-treaty section provided they were countersigned by himself. On the 16th of January, the 1st IRA Division, the 2nd Southern Division, repudiated the authority of the GHQ. On the 18th of January, Richard Mulcahy chaired a meeting of the GHQ staff, divisional commandants, and some brigade commandants. It agreed to hold an army convention within 2 months, and that in the meantime, a watchdog community known as, this is important, the Army Reunification Committee would be set up with representatives from both sides. The committee did not meet often, however, and failed to heal the rift in the IRA. A month later, on 18th of February, Liam Ford, I believe that's Liam Ford. That's Liam Ford. Excuse me. Sorry. Of the OC of the IRA Mid-Limerick Brigade issued a proclamation stating, "We no longer recognize the authority of the present head of the army and renew our alliance to the existing Irish Republic." This was the first unit of the IRA to break within the pro-treaty government. On the 24th of February, the Watchdog Committee, established a month earlier, met. Rory O'Connor requested Mulcahy to secure Dale approval to hold an army convention on 26th of March. 3 days later, on 27th of February, Dale Cabinet sanctioned the Minister of Defense's request to hold an army convention. This decision was duly announced by the IRA Chief of Staff Eowyn O'Duffy, who requested brigade conventions to assemble to elect delegates. On the 5th of March, a standoff developed between pro and anti-IRA forces in Limerick over who would take control of military barracks vacated by the departing British troops. A compromise was reached around the 12th or 13th of March to prevent fighting breaking out, but tensions remain high in the city. Alright, this next bit is going to be covering the Army Convention. Most of this is going to have to do... I'm switching back to the Rory O'Connor picture because there's a lot of stuff about Rory O'Connor in this. Also, Michael Collins, he comes up a couple of times too. He's, like I said in one of the earlier videos, he's pretty much the main dude for a lot of this earlier stuff. Clearly concerned at developments in Ireland and in Limerick in particular, on the 14th of March, Winston Churchill wrote to Michael Collins, warning him that an adverse decision by the convention of the IRA, so-called, would however be a very grave event at the present juncture. I presume you are quite sure that there is no danger of this. So he's pretty much just like shaking his finger at him and saying, hey, get this handled, alright? No IRA business. The following day, the 15th of March, the Dale Cabinet decided to prohibit the holding of the Army Convention, scheduled to take place on the 26th of March. Amateur historian Dorothy McCardle claims that the banning of the convention arose because, quote-unquote, Mulcahy realized that 70 to 80% of the IRA was against the treaty, and he feared that the convention would have established a military dictatorship. However, issuing a summons under the title of Republican Military Council, 50 IRA senior officers, including 4 GHQ staff, 5 divisional commanders, and a number of brigade commandants, decided to go ahead with the convention. On the 22nd of March, Rory O'Connor held what was to become an infamous press conference at the headquarters of the Republican Army, Cumann na Poblachta, in Suffolk Street, Dublin. And again, excuse me if I butcher these pronunciations. He declared that the army was in a dilemma, having the choice of supporting its oath to the Republic or still giving alliance to the Dale, which it considers has abandoned the Republic. The contention of the army, he said, is that the Dale did a thing that it had no right to do. When asked if he would obey President Arthur Griffith, he said he would not, as he had violated the oath. His oath, specifically. When he asked if the army would forcibly prevent an election being held, O'Connor stated, quote-unquote, "I will have the power to do so." He went on to say that the holding of the convention means that we will repudiate the deal. We will set up an executive which will issue orders to the IRA all over the country. In reply to the question on whether it can be taken that we are going to have a military dictatorship, O'Connor stated, "You can take it with the way you like it." Excuse me. You can take it the way if you like. You can take it that way if you like. Excuse me. Sorry, I was tripping over my words. He also explained how the British did not give the Irish any help. On the 23rd of March, Richard Mulcahy, again the Minister of Defense, in a letter to General O'Duffy, orders the suspension of any officer or man who takes part in the sectional convention. On the 26th of March, a convention of predominantly anti-treaty delegates met in the Mansion House in Dublin, with between 220 and 223 delegates present. This convention passed a resolution saying that the army shall be maintained as the Army of the Irish Republic under an executive appointed by the convention. A temporary executive of 16 members was elected by Liam Lynch and including Rory O'Connor, Liam Mellows, and Ernie O'Malley. The convention adjourned until 9th of April. On the 28th of March, the anti-treaty IRA executive issued statements stating that the Minister of Defense Mulcahy and the Chief of Staff O'Duffy no longer exercised any control over the IRA. In addition, it ordered an end to the recruitment to the new military and police forces of the provisional government. Furthermore, it instructed all IRA units to reaffirm their allegiance to the Irish Republic on the 2nd of April, sorry. If you may excuse me, I've been sick lately. It's clouded my mind a little bit, so I've been tripping over my words. On the 9th of April, the Anti-Treaty Army Convention reconvened in Dublin. It adopted a new constitution and elected a 16-member executive composed of the following members: Liam Lynch, Cork; Frank Barrett, Clare. So these are like the areas where they're presiding over. Liam D.C., Cork; Tom Hales, Cork; Tom Maguire, Mayo, something like that; John McKelvey, Belfast; Liam Gallows, Galloway; Rory O'Connor, Dublin, possibly, we're not 100% sure; Peter O'Donnell, Donegal; Florence O'Donoghue, Cork; Sean O'Hagerty, Cork; Ernie O'Malley, Dublin; Seamus Robinson, Tipperary; Joe O'Connor, unknown; Sean Moylan, Cork; and P.J. Rutledge, Mayo. When the executive met, it elected Liam Lynch as the new IRA Chief of Staff and appointed a 7-member Army Council. Barry's Hotel in Gardner Road was made anti-treaty IRA headquarters. Alright, now this is a very short telling of a very important incident in the Irish Civil War. This is the Four Courts occupation. So this is very much the Sparks Notes of a very important thing, so it is highly recommended that you do further research into this and don't just take this bit. On the 14th of April, about 200 anti-treaty IRA men in Dublin seized the Four Courts building and several other buildings in the city centre. They were hoping to provoke the remaining British troops in Ireland, numbering 5,000 men in Dublin, into attacking them, hoping that this would restart the war, wreck the treaty, and reunite the IRA. The provisional government wanted to await the result of the 1922 general election on the 16th of June, which provided proof favorable to them, but was continually criticized and ignored by the anti-treaty side. The provisional government was then pressured into dealing with the Four Courts garrison by the British. Michael Collins, in particular, was very reluctant to do this, and it was not until the Four Courts men kidnapped J.J. O'Connell in late June that he decided to act. At this time, the executive of the anti-treaty IRA under Liam Lynch had to stone the Four Courts men for their provocative behavior. On the 28th of June, 1922, Collins' Free State troops opened fire on the Four Courts with borrowed British artillery. Fighting broke out in Dublin, and the anti-treaty IRA took the side of the Four Courts men. Michael Collins was killed on the 22nd of August, 1922, at the village of Bale No Bell. The Civil War lasted until May of 1923, when the IRA called a ceasefire and dumped its arms. All right, thank you for listening. This was IRA and the Anglo-Irish Treaty. I wish that you have a good day, and goodbye.